In our last video, Frankie and I explored our natural surroundings to look for an interesting mystery to focus on. Using all of our senses and engaging with our own curiosity, this can be done anywhere. You may be wondering what to do now. Don't worry, this is a chance to practice your investigation skills. Like all good detectives and scientists, we can get better at being intentionally curious by asking lots of questions and making further observations to try and answer them. Now that you've explored a wildland, your local neighborhood, or a plant on your windowsill, brainstorm a list of questions you have. Try to focus on questions that you can answer by making further observations. Often, these questions start with who, what, when, where, or how many. Focus on observable characteristics such as color, size, shape, texture, number, or distance. For example, in the meadow, I noticed 2 different plants that were often growing near each other. In my investigation, I had several questions I wanted to answer about them. Notice how these questions are all answerable through direct observation or measurement. Number 1. How do the branches and leaves look different from each other on these 2 species? What are some similarities? These may seem like simple questions, but you often need this kind of information if you want to identify a plant species. Number 2. How tall are the Douglas firs in the meadow versus the ones near the forest edge? I had the same question about the coyote brush. Number 3. Are there more coyote brush in the meadow than along the forest edge? How about the Douglas firs?
Back in my neighborhood, I went through the same inquiry process as Valerie. Here were some of my questions that came up during my walk. First, after seeing that the ivy plant wrapped around a chestnut tree and telephone pole, I wondered whether the roots I observed were always anchoring the ivy plant. I noticed that in some cases the roots didn't attach to anything. Second, I asked myself, do other vines have similar structures for anchoring to other surfaces? During my exploration, I found another vine that had tendrils, or curly threads, attaching to several things like a fence and a tree branch. Of course, many questions are not easily answerable or even answerable at all. It's certainly appropriate to pose these questions, think deeply about them, and look for even the slightest partial answer to them. For instance, one question that came up for me that was difficult to answer was, I wonder how long it takes for the ivy plant to attach itself to the surface it grows on. Clearly, I could have remained at the site for many days but did not have time.
You may have noticed that we skipped one type of question, why questions. Why questions are different. Questions that start with why can't easily be answered through direct observation, but instead require you to pose some possible explanations about what might be happening. Answering why questions represents the next step in our inquiry process. In our next video, we will demonstrate how to dive deeper and turn your why questions into working hypotheses.